Okay, Bruce, we are recording again. It's been a couple of weeks since we have done this, and we're going to talk about something that hopefully is a bit positive here. Anyway, I think almost everybody that's of a certain age, when I say November 22nd, 1963, they're going to say, I know where I was, I know what happened. But what they know what happened was probably from around 1 o'clock or so on through the rest of the day. And of course, I'm referring to the assassination of JFK. But there's something else really interesting happened before that, on that day, and a couple of weeks afterwards. On the morning of November 22nd, 1963, Walter Cronkite had a morning news show. And he featured this very curious group out of England called the Beatles, which was actually bringing up quite a storm over in England and Europe in terms of popularity, but they really hadn't made it here yet. So he showed a brief in the morning, like a preview, with a promise that tonight we're going to go more deeply into this group. Well, of course, by tonight, that time the evening hit, there was no room for that story because for the next 4 days, it was wall-to-wall coverage on the JFK assassination. A couple of weeks goes by. I think it was around December 10th or 12th or whatever date it was. Cronkite realizes that the nation needs an uplift, needs to get out of its doldrums, and dusts off that story about that curious group from England and shows the full thing that he was meant to show the evening of November 22nd. Ed Sullivan sees that newscast and says, I need to sign them on, gets them signed for February. The rest is history. The nation starts to come out of its doldrums. I look at that in terms of a great story. We all know about Beatles music. Most of them love it, love them, love their music. But the backstory is amazing. And the statement that Cronkite said about the nation needs an uplift, needs to get out of its bad spirits. What an incredible, insightful, inspiring statement coming from a journalist. And I wonder if we'd even have any of our journalists thinking that way today when we also are still kind of suffering from quite a bit of downward spiraling of spirits.
Yeah, it's truly a fascinating story, and you don't think of Walter Cronkite as a great observer of life, but he was, obviously. He was the most trusted man in the nation at that time. Mm-hmm. And long before that, and I'm sure long after that. And he made an observation that we needed to move forward in a more positive light. And I think, accepting tragedy, but recognizing that we need to overcome it and rally and be better than that is a message for today's marketers. You and I were talking before we hit record here today that we've both been vaccinated and we're looking forward to what's ahead. And I think that's what marketers need to do right now. Yeah. And branders. They need to be about hope and promise and what can be better. These times, they challenge all of us. At times, it is just a grind. We all recognize that. But as a marketer, there's really an opportunity. That's what you need to do. You need to look as a brand builder and as a marketer to look at the world around you and fill a need.
Yeah.
And see how your brand fills that need. And right now, the need is for optimism. It's for positive. It's for sorry. What's really funny is that's some very old number. Yeah. For a guy at the thing said Ogilvy and Mather.
Oh, wow.
I don't even know if they exist anymore. But anyway, of course they do.
But your ring sounded like a Star Trek-y thing. But anyway.
Yeah, anyway. The point being, it's about promise. It's about the future. It's about building something better now.
Yeah.
And being prepared to do this together. And I think we're starting to see some of that when you look at some of the commercials out there in terms of hope and promise. but there are brands that naturally connect to this idea,
Yeah.
and they need to do the work.
Yeah, I agree. Is there any brands in particular you think are doing what you're saying now?
Well, you know, it's funny. There's a brand called Ultra Beauty, which is, I think, a makeup brand, that I've been struck by. I've seen a couple of their spots over the last few weeks. And, I guess it's about being your best version of yourself and getting out there and putting yourself out there in preparation for the opening of America, I guess, and the opening of the world, and actually putting makeup on again when you get up in the morning, I guess. But
Yeah.
I was struck by it. And what I'm really struck by is how little of the technology advertising is actually talking about the future. When I think of technology advertising, I think of it all focused on the future and what can be. And I'm not, that's the area. They were the ones that I thought would lead in this, and they're not.
They're not, and it's really curious. They're actually being more, well, they've got a lot they have to be defensive over right now. They're suddenly getting attacked from, I think, both sides of the political spectrum to a degree, related to the size and scopes of their companies and whatnot. But that whole notion of hope and what we can be is definitely what's missing, as opposed to there's an awful lot of side taking, um, almost shaming, and I don't know how that ultimately helps your bottom line. I really don't understand. I know I understand like certain niches that exist that you can go for and whatnot, but this whole notion of getting yourself sucked into so many of these various what I'll call more political issues versus business issues, um, I can't reconcile it in my head. I just don't.
Well, and what's interesting is I'm struck by how many companies have chosen sides.
Yeah,
In all my years in marketing, while we may take a side on an issue, a specific issue, we certainly labored hard not to take sides, to be on the left or the right,
exactly.
to be, to take a position that is potentially polarizing to a third of the population or more.
Yeah.
I don't understand why that would be a good decision unless your customers are demanding that you take a side.
Yeah.
And in that case, you've got to, unless your product or the service you're providing forces you there, I don't know why you would.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I think most of the customers are there, want to just get through their life, deal with their issues every single day. I think there's a vast 60% of us out there that have more in common with each other than we think, than we don't. There's always going to be those that are going to, pull you from the extreme. So it will be interesting to see, where this goes. But again, I keep hoping for somewhere out there is our current version of Walter Cronkite and our current version of the Beatles. Now, it may come out of another area. It may not come out of news. It may not come out of music. It may come out of somewhere else. But something drastic like that is really, really needed. Otherwise, we're like this big Alka-Seltzer thrown into a vat of water that just keeps bubbling away until the point that all we have is a bunch of gas. How do you like
Well,
that?
it's interesting. It seems to me that there are people out there trying to fill that gap, the Walter Cronkite gap. One person comes right to mind, Bill Gates, and the Gates Foundation and the organization that he's formed with this, newsletters and things like that, where he's trying to take it, I think, down the middle and be an optimist.
Yeah.
But but there aren't a lot of people that have Walter Cronkite's credibility. The question, what was his Q score? Did they do Q scores
I
back
don't
then?
know.
No. But what was his Q score? It must have been off the charts.
We didn't have the
So,
competition they have today. So
yeah. So the question becomes, who's that highly credible voice? And maybe it's not a person, but who are those highly credible voices that can stand up and get us focused on tomorrow instead of yesterday?
well, that'll be interesting to observe. And if anyone's got some thoughts on who or what that is, those comments are welcome. In the meantime, we have to keep searching for them like an Easter egg in the grass.
You got it. Have
All
a
right.
great Easter egg.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.